and our special guest, Robert Nevarez. I think I got your name right, didn't I, Robert?
Yes. How are you?
It's amazing what you can teach a pilot these days. And this is our weekly show for all of you who've been following us, or even if you're new. For anyone who's afraid of flying or has a fear of flying, anybody who knows somebody who's afraid to fly, or anybody who just likes to talk airplanes like we do. And we normally have our other co-hosts here. Dieter's starting here. Dieter's in the background here, helping out as he always is. And our other regular captain, Eric Larson, is off. He has a trip, and he's in Honolulu. Poor guy, tough duty tonight. And he made up some excuse, but he wanted to enjoy the layover there or something like that. So anyway, so it's Robert and I holding down the fort here. And our goal is to help you change the way you think about flying. And tonight we're just going to limit it to the interview with Robert and I. We just completed our Clear for Takeoff 201 class in Burbank, California, and we're just there at the Air Hollywood Studios. And this is my opinion, but it was certainly the most fun that I've ever had. Every group has its own personality, and but this group was particularly joyful and energetic and all that. And when you get done talking to Robert, I'm sorry, but you're going to say he probably was another plant and wasn't really afraid. But we'll see if we can't touch on some of the reality of what his life has been like that. So anyway, so let's just get right into it. So Robert, welcome. Just tell everybody your name again, and that way you won't mess it up like I made it.
No, you got it right. My name is Robert Nevarez, and I had a great time also.
And what do you do for a living, Robert?
I am a chief of police in Delano, California. I've been a cop for 33 years, and loved my career, still loving it, and that's what I do.
And I'm telling you, I believe that, because from the moment that we first met on Saturday, you have a spirit and an energy about you that was really inspiring. So thanks for coming to the class. Thanks for being afraid to fly and making my day. So,
sure.
Let's just talk a little bit about that. First of all, I want to commend you for the courage, not only to come to the class on Saturday, but basically just to confront your fear, and especially for a male, especially for somebody of stature like you. And then to come on and share it with the group tonight. So what, what's the deal? Were you can't really have been afraid to fly.
Ron, Captain Ron, I was not a plant. I promise you. My wife will testify to that. I haven't flown in about 12 to 13 years. And what's funny is I used to fly. I've flown all over the country. I used to fly to the Dominican Republic. We had a cigar factory there. But it's interesting, about 12, 13 years ago, I developed this phobia of flying, and can't really put my finger on why, but it was very real, and I haven't flown. I just refused to fly, and it was driving my wife nuts.
Yeah, and I met your lovely wife, Celia, correct?
Celia, yes.
Celia, yeah. And she's a hoot too. It was just great having the both of you on the flight and all that. When you what were the things that we call them triggers? What were the triggers for you?
Well, for me, it was being trapped. There's no doubt. I'm really not afraid of crashing. That doesn't bother me. In fact, I've flown in smaller planes, actually at the police department. I've flown in helicopters, but it didn't hit me there because I felt control there, because I was the boss. I was in charge of the helicopter unit in Fresno. And so in my mind, I logicked that I could always tell them to land. But when I got in a big plane and I couldn't tell the pilots to land, I felt trapped. And I would start to panic, and I would develop shortness of breath. My heart would start racing, and it was just a very not enjoyable experience.
And you said you had flown for before that. Was it pretty much without any concerns at all?
I was always kind of a little nervous, but it never developed into the panic that I got that caused me to be very uncomfortable. I just did not enjoy the flights at all there at the end. And I just told my wife, I'm not flying anymore. I refuse to fly. And that was about 12, 13 years ago.
And what was it that you decided that, okay, Saturday's the day?
Well, what's funny, it's not funny. What's interesting, Ron, is I also developed a fear of public speaking back then. But I confronted that head on. I became a Toastmaster and became a president of a club, a governor, and I used certain techniques to overcome that fear. But yet I still had this fear of flying. And my wife had been on me. She loves to travel. She wants to go to Europe. Well, that ain't going to happen if I don't fly, right? So she wouldn't back off. And I just became kind of reflective about it. I'm 55 years old, and I was thinking one night, I'm not going to go to my deathbed not having fulfilled my wife's joy to travel. I'm not going to tie it with that burden. And so I thought, certainly somebody out there has to have developed a class where you actually do it, because I read about it, right? Logically, I knew it was a dumb fear, but I figured somebody's got to actually take you on it. And so I just did an internet search, fear of flying practical application, and boom, you popped up and you were right in my backyard 3 weeks later.
Cool.
Yeah.
And from the class itself, can you, just whatever you remember, what were the high points for you in the class itself?
Well, here was a part that for me was incredibly valuable. I just told you I'm a cop, and so I rely on evidence. I'm an evidence-based guy. Well, yeah.
That's why you took my fingerprints.
That's why I took your prints. Yeah, sized you up and ran you for warrants before we even started, and you came back clear, so you're okay. No, I'm just kidding. No, you got the resume, right? I mean, you're an expert, and you told me all these things about how it's not dangerous. You told me that there's a lot of people that are like me, and we pulled the class, and a lot of people aren't afraid of the plane crashing either. They're afraid of the confinement, right? So I believed you. And then Dieter, from a psychological perspective, he's an expert. I believed him. And then you brought in Arnold, who brought in the statistics that were just, I'm sorry, it was just so much evidence. It was hard for me to get even nervous as I got on the plane. I just believed you guys. And I don't think any other group could have done that for me, because I just had an incredible amount of trust in you.
Well, I appreciate that. And Arnold, or Dieter, for those people listening, is my right-hand guy and super duper first officer. And Arnold is Arnold Barnett, who I picked up and followed way back in the early 2000s. And he started doing statistics. Interestingly, Arnold also shared that he had a fear of flying one time, and it just happens that he is a statistician by trade. He's an MIT fellow up there, and so that's the first time I had him live. I just usually used to steal his material there, but he had updated it, and I wanted to see if he had any updates, because I hadn't gotten any new information from him for a while. And so he agreed very graciously to come to the class there, and he did. He blew me away with the way, and he's got just such a great presentation and all that. And I'll never forget the one about he made it about kids and what their odds are of becoming president and all that. And it's much less likely that you'll die in an airplane crash than it is for a kid to become president. So it was really interesting. What was Celia's take on the class, or her experience there? I should have did I talk on it?
Well, she loved it. First of all, she was very appreciative of the fact that she knew that this was something that I'd been living with for a long time, and that I was willing to confront it. And she knows that it's because of her, because the fact is, if it wasn't for my wife, I just figure, well, I'll just be like John Madden and I'll take buses across the country. But I just know that's not practical. And so she's very, very pleased, and she loved the class. She had as much fun as all of us had. Yeah.
Were you surprised when you walked in? What were your expectations when you walked in terms of people?
It was, well, first of all, there was a lot more people than I thought. And I had the same thought, well, my gosh, look at all these people that are afraid of flying, and they look relatively normal. They don't look, I don't know what I expected. I expected a lot of people that were just kind of frantic looking, and they were very calm looking, but yet I knew that by being there, they were fearful of flying. And so that made me feel like, okay, I'm not weird. I'm not odd. This isn't, I'm not the only person dealing with this. And the set that we had where, when we sat down initially kind of it resembled, the check-in point for when you're getting on a plane, and then actually getting on the plane, it started to kind of prepare me for the environment that I was going to sit in. And then when there was the turbulence in the plane, because that, even though I wasn't afraid of crashing, I didn't like the turbulence. After a while, I kind of just got used to the fact that it was bumpy, kind of like a car driving down 99. right?
Yeah.
And so when that happened on the plane, it wasn't unusual. I'd already experienced it, and even though it was now in the air, I just it wasn't that frightening for me.
Yeah. When you know, I ask everybody whether to rate their anxiety 1 to 10,
Yes.
with 1 being calm and 10 being anxious. Initially, where were you at in that with your anxiety, just walking into the class?
Surprisingly, your presence was very calming for me. I don't know why. I don't know. It just was, and I was maybe at a 1 or 2. I think I put up 2 fingers at the most.
Yeah.
And and it stayed there, and it just stayed there even more when I heard Dieter speak. I heard, I believe, a Sue speak, and
Yes.
and then Arnold, and I stayed relatively calm, and it was very enjoyable.
Yeah. Any observations about others in the room? You know, what your perception of their anxiety was?
There were people in the room that were very, very nervous, and there was visibly so. In fact, yeah, and even on the flight, there were some people that were visibly anxious, but you know, they were confronting their fears, and I thought that was just so cool.
Yeah. As we moved out of the classroom and to the airport, you know, how was your anxiety then? Did it fluctuate? Was there a point where it kind of peaked, or what happened then?
You know, I hate to disappoint, but I stayed pretty calm all the way through. Now, when we started to take off, but sometimes when you start to get a little anxious, I do things to cause me to overcome the anxiety by being overly confident. And the thing that we did on takeoff, where we did where we raised our hands up and our nose lifted off the ground, was really helpful, because it was weird. It was like I turned that energy in me into excitement. Yeah. And so I don't even know if my heart was racing, to be honest with you, because it would have been normal because I was excited. And so it never really climbed much. And then what was also, I think, beneficial was that the lady that was next to me she was struggling with it. Yeah. And so I turned my attention to her to comfort her. I didn't have time to be nervous at all. Yeah. And but so overall, it was I stayed about a 2, maybe at the most.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned that the excitement turned into excitement. I actually think of anxiety at one end of the continuum and excitement on the other end. So it really is the same emotion, but it has a different connotation, right? When we're anxious, it's kind of a negative one. When we're excited, it's a positive one. So again, I tell people, you experience some level of arousal all the time. If you're flatline, you're dead. That's not good.
Correct.
So it's just a matter of managing that. And what I firmly believe, and people like you firmly verify for me, is it is a matter of confidence. And for whatever reason, some people relate some parts of flying to just not knowing what's going on and not having confidence that either the airplane and the flight is going to be safe, and that they're going to be safe and all that. So,
yes.
What would you, I mean, obviously not everybody can go to the class or anything like that, but do you have any recommendations for people, from the perspective of someone who was anxious and now is beyond it?
Well, first of all, it's illogical. The fear of flying is, well, I take that back. There's a lot of good reasons not to be anxious about flying, a lot. And kind of like public speaking, right? But the difference between, because I can read books on how to be a better public speaker. I can read books about how not to be afraid of flying. Yeah. And that's all good. But I think deep down, this fear says, show me. And so the combination of the classroom experience coupled with the fact that you're excited about it, it's like, okay, I get it now. I'm excited. I'm going to do it. And then you have an opportunity 2 hours later to get on a plane and do it. You take advantage of the fact that you're pumped up and ready versus waiting 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because that may allow that fear to kind of creep its way back in and you start to buy into those garbage beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the combination is perfect, Captain Ron. Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's another good point. When I do custom coaching for people, they'll ask me, so how's this work? And I say, well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to set a date to fly within 30 days. And they're like, Well, wait a minute. That's a little silly. But it comes from the same place as your experience, and that is the best thing to do is to go out and do it, because exposure therapy, and that's basically what we did on Saturday. It is the best way to overcome a phobia like fear of flying. So, any recommendations for people out there, who are sitting there saying, "I told you he wasn't really afraid to fly."
No. I was. I wish my wife was here with me right now. I'd put you on. She'd tell you, no, the guy was not going to fly. And in fact, listen, if you're afraid of flying, it can be overcome. And obviously, you're going to do it at your own pace. And that's the beautiful part about this class is nobody's pushing you. There were people there that were a little more anxious than others, and they're choosing to deal with it at their own pace. Nobody's gonna embarrass you. And it really is a loving, accepting environment, which is I used to talk about in Toastmasters. It's an environment where it's okay to be nervous and confront your fears, and you take your little steps as you want. And for me, I was at a place where I jumped right in. In fact, I'm going to schedule my next flight. I don't even know where the heck I'm going to fly to, but I'm flying someplace, even if I don't need to go someplace, because I want to own this part of my life. I want to own it. I'm not giving it back. So I encourage you to go through the class. It was very beneficial for me.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your experiences with us tonight. And again, it was a total joy meeting you and working with you. And my best to Celia. And I can't talk to you. We're not done with you. We're going to stay connected. And I'm grateful for that. Thanks a lot. And
thank you.
I hope to talk to you in the future.
Thank you, Capt Ron.
Great.